A long-awaited return to racing, shake-up at AlphaTauri, and a brand new sprint weekend format. This is Into the Chicane. I'm your host, Channing Apodaca, and for the first time ever, I'm flying solo as Brandon is taking some time off following the birth of the newest member of the Into the Chicane family. So congratulations to him and Susie Wolf's Stan account. I don't want to give away too much information, but I can report that it is a beautiful, healthy baby boy. 10 fingers, 10 toes, and his lap times are already 3/10 faster than his father's. So that's good. We're happy about that. I met him too. Big, strong, thick neck. Tree trunk. It's going to be good. G-force is up to 8, 9, maybe. It's going to be a late breaker. I can tell. He was doing this the whole time with his foot, flexing it. Yeah. Last of the late breakers. Are you kidding me? We just got a brand new one. Anyway, it's been nearly a month since we've had F1 racing. A giant gap was left vacant on the calendar when the Shanghai Grand Prix, which was originally scheduled for April 16th, was canceled preseason, and tracks like Turkey and Portugal failed in their bid to become last-minute replacements, leaving us without a race for an entire change of seasons. It was winter the last time we had an F1 race. It was snowing. I was in Wisconsin. I was stuck in a blizzard during the Australian Grand Prix. It was winter. Now we're well into spring. And we're finally getting an F1 race. And honestly, in that whole time, that entire time off, not a whole lot has happened in terms of news, other than Lewis going fully undercover to support his brother Nicholas at a British touring car race, and Charles Leclerc being a top 10 artist on iTunes for his piano playing for some reason. I listened to it. If you like piano, then I'm sure it's good. I don't really know a whole lot. It sounded good. It sounded nice. Top 5. I think he was 6th last time I checked. Weird flex, Chuck, but okay. Good on you. We did get some pretty big news in the last few days from the AlphaTauri team when they announced that team principal Franz Tost will be leaving the team at the end of the season. Longtime team principal. I want to say that he's been there since their inception. Don't quote me on that. They might have had a different team principal in the first 1 or 2 years, but he's been there for a good chunk of it. He's been there for a nice clip of the AlphaTauri and the Toro Rosso existence. They're replacing him with current Ferrari assistant team principal Laurent Mekies, and then they've also hired a gentleman by the name of Peter Bayers as CEO. So they're going to kind of like do a little bit of a tandem to start things out next season, I believe, which is interesting to say the least, because I don't know if you guys remember this, but AlphaTauri is in the midst of denying rumors that the team is for sale. A little fishy that your team principal all of a sudden, mid-season, wants to announce that he's leaving at the end of the season when you guys are in the middle of denying the fact that the team is being sold. Some stinks. What if this is all just a giant ploy for Red Bull to sell the team to Ferrari, and Ferrari use the AlphaTauri team as their sister team? There is the Italian tie. It used to be Minardi. Now they're AlphaTauri. They were Toro Rosso. Toro Rosso is Italian for Red Bull. Who knows? Be interesting to find out what they call themselves. Scuderia Attimatu. Something like that. I don't know. Probably not, though, right? That's a boy can dream. That'd be the fun, dramatic way to go about it. Wouldn't that be fun? Ferrari becomes the big bad guys with the second team, developing young drivers at an unfair advantage, an unfair rate. Won't happen, though. I highly doubt it. This is probably just a sign of the team leaning into commitment. You know what I mean? Taking a step forward under new leadership. It's probably how they're viewing it. Would be fun, though. Like I said, a boy can dream. We also got brand new news of a brand new sprint weekend format. They dropped this on us after already announcing the weekend format at the beginning of the season of how things would go, and it was the classic sprint format. 2 practices, qualifying session, you qualify for the sprint race finishing order determines the grid for the race on Sunday. Not anymore. Not this weekend, son. Sonny Jim. Now we have FP1 on Friday. FP2 and FP3 are gone altogether, which is good because who really cares about practice? From a fan perspective, the drivers, the teams, probably love practice. FP2 especially, figuring out which tires they're going to go on. But those are all gone completely. Now you have FP1 on Friday, and qualifying for the Grand Prix on Sunday on Friday. So let me rephrase that. FP1 on Friday, Grand Prix qualifying on Friday. Saturday is all about the new sprint. It's all about the sprint, the new Sprint Shootout, which is basically just a specified qualifying session, followed by the sprint race that afternoon. So Saturday, Sprint Shootout, which again is just a specified qualifying session, and I'll tell you what that means, followed by the sprint race that afternoon. And then, as always, the Grand Prix on Sunday, the grid order of which, like I said, is coming from Friday's qualifying session. So like I said, the Sprint Shootout qualifying has specified rules. These rules are: teams are required to use the medium tires in Q1 and in Q2, and the soft tires in Q3, should you make it into each of those, from Q1 to Q2 to Q3. And then also, each session is shortened by 2 minutes per round, starting with Q1 going 12 minutes long, Q2 10 minutes, Q3 8 minutes, which means when the teams get on those soft tires, there's going to be a lot of traffic. 10 cars vying for position and only 10 minutes to do so. It's going to be very, very interesting to see. I, for one, have never been a big fan of sprint weekends to begin with. I've always thought that the sprint takes away from qualies, which I love. Qualies are one of my favorite parts of a Grand Prix weekend. It's basically time trials. You get to see drivers giving it their all, one lap at a time. And it takes away from the race on Sunday, especially since drivers don't always go 100% in sprint races and instead kind of choose to play it safe in order to maintain grid position for the Grand Prix. Because like I said, with the previous sprint format, you had qualifying setting the grid order for the sprint and the sprint results setting the grid order for the Grand Prix. Now, however, each race, the sprint and the Grand Prix, have their own separate qualifying and are almost two separate events. One just being shorter than the other and for less points. So no matter what happens to you in the sprint, that has no bearing on your Grand Prix position, whether you win it or DNF. Your qualifying position for the Grand Prix is set by what you qualified on Friday. So interesting. Very, very interesting. I, for one, am a little bit of a blank slate on this format. In part, it seems kind of pointless since there's only a maximum of 8 points on the line for each driver and only 15 points on the line for each team. It's going to be 8 points to the winner, 7 points for second, 6 points for P3, so on and so forth until it's just 1 point for 8th place, meaning that 12 drivers won't be getting points. So the risk versus reward factor for drivers and teams alike is heavily favored towards risk. Drivers are risking their safety every single time they step in a car. That's obvious, though unlikely. And teams are risking damage to the car every single time they do a session. So adding an extra qualifying session under the scrutiny of time constraints especially is a big risk for potential damage to the cars, I guess that's it, to the car and the drivers. The teams are probably more worried about the car. It's safe. And most importantly, to any damaging effects to the car that are going to take place on Sunday. Like should you get in an accident during the sprint race, how is that damage to your car going to affect your Grand Prix race where it really matters? So teams in the midfield or in the back of the pack, at first glance, don't really have a reason to metaphorically show up if the odds of them even getting a single point are decreased by 2. It's hard enough to get into the top 10 for those teams. Now they have to get into the top 8. So their incentive to really want to perform in sprint qualifying or the sprint shootout and then in the sprint race almost seems pointless. That's from their perspective, the way I see it. But for fans, more qualies, more races is great on paper. Every single session with this new format, aside from FP1, is an exciting and competitive session. We dropped 2 sessions of just practice, getting data. We got rid of those and we added an extra session of competition in the shootout. So that's good. This format is also, it's a great sign of F1 really leaning into the straight-up entertainment factor, which I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, because anytime sports entities or governing bodies lean too hard into or solely on the entertainment factor and not on the sporting side of things, it can bring up questions of fixing or biases and yada yada. And that's probably the last thing that F1 needs right now, honestly, following, the great debacle and controversy that was the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix just 2 years ago. But like I said, I'm a blank slate. I'm in a very we shall see mentality for this weekend's format. Either way, it's exciting just to have something new and something different to look forward to. And at the Baku street circuit in Azerbaijan, of all places, a race that in the last few years has given us tons of excitement and is, for some reason, one that I always look forward to. It's a fun one. As far as what to expect from this race, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you feel, probably more of the same. I would expect Sergio Perez is probably going to play his I'm the king of the streets card and give his teammate a run for his money. The two Mercs will probably battle with Fernando Alonso for a spot on the podium, and the Ferraris will probably show some pretty good speed, but end up in the middle somewhere. I do have a gut feeling, though, that one of the midfield cars or back-of-the-pack cars might give us a good surprise. Whether that be a Haas or an AlphaTauri sneaking into the points, or maybe Alex Albon high up in the points. That Williams does have a lot of great straight line speed. We've talked about that a bunch. A lot of straights there in Baku. Alex maybe sending it up the nose, sending a nose up the inside, getting in there tight. Who knows? Could also be a ton of carnage in the sprint. We have no idea. Maybe we'll see Logan Sargent in the points, period. That would be nice. He's in that same Williams that Alex Albon's in. If they have a good showing this weekend, who's to say Logan Sargent couldn't nab a point or two? Maybe we'll see an an Alpine on the podium. Maybe we'll get McLaren back in the mix. Who knows what's going to happen? I have a gut feeling, though, that something like that is going to happen. Something that might shake this shit up, but probably not. If I were a betting man, I'd say it's going to be more of the same. Who knows? But that does take us to our bold predictions. Brandon sent me his. Brandon's first prediction for this race, he believes that McLaren will be back out of the top 10, despite what I just said. He says that Gasly will get 6th or better. Pierre Gasly, 6th or better. And Alex Albon better than top 10, so Alex Albon top 9. He's really softballing these predictions. He's really just phoning this shit in. Bold predictions. McLaren stays bad. Alex Albon stays maybe. Pierre Gasly stays maybe. Ooh. Couple of real layups there, Brandon. He's leading this 4-1, I believe. Maybe 3-1. I'd have to go back and count. But he's leading the race in the predictions. And we can see why. My 3 bold predictions for this race. 1, Max Verstappen clean sweep. Max Verstappen will take pole in qualies on Friday. He'll take pole in the shootout, the sprint shootout. He'll win the sprint race and then win the race. That's how you do a bold prediction. Because that's probably not going to happen. Win all 4 of those? Pole in qualifying, pole in the sprint shootout, win the sprint race, win the Grand Prix? That would be historic. That's a bold prediction. Because that is a probably not. You want to make your predictions bold, Brandon? You go with the probably not. And then you say it might. Number 2, I think there's going to be multiple collisions in the sprint race. Contrary to what I was saying earlier, for why I typically don't like sprint races, being that drivers usually play it so safe, I think that this might be a little bit of a melee. I think we're going to see 2 collisions or more in the sprint race. Guys are going to be looking at this and going, well, doesn't affect my qualifying position for the race on Sunday. This is my best impression of an F1 driver. This is probably how Nicholas Latifi talks. Doesn't affect my qualifying position for the race on Sunday. So I'm just going to send it. Try and get 8th and get a single point. and really do some damage to mine and everybody else's cars. Maybe. We'll see. And then my last prediction, number 3, by the end of this weekend, Mercedes will have surpassed Aston Martin and be second place in the World Championship standings. Those are my 3. Brandon again, McLaren out of the top 10, Gasly 6th or better, Alex Albon 9th or better, Channing, Max Verstappen, all 4, multiple collisions in the sprint race, and by the end of the weekend, Mercedes will be in second place. There you have it. That is your Into the Chicane Azerbaijan Grand Prix preview. We'll be back following this race with all the answers to all those questions. We'll be back with fantasy updates and our bold prediction race updates. Maybe I can catch Brandon. Could you imagine if all 3 of those happen and I tie this shit in one race? That'd be as historic as Max getting 2 qualifying and pole positions and 2 race wins in a single weekend. Don't know. We'll find out later. This has been Into the Chicane. I'm Channing Apodaca. We will see you guys next time. Peace.